Welcome to Breaking Eggs with Seth Shezi. Breaking Eggs is a visual podcast where Seth talks to creative entrepreneurs, designers, seekers, healers, and thought leaders. During these candid and insightful chats, Seth teases out some nuggets from his exceptional guests that are sure to inspire, entertain, and make you go, huh, when you hear their unique methods of pursuing fulfillment.
I am Seth Shezi. Join me every week as I crack open the lives and learnings of some very special guests. We'll be chatting about the 5 golden pillars of a good life: wellness, wealth, love, mindset, and impact. Through these unscripted chats, I'm looking to uncover untold stories, answer some of my own questions, and hopefully leave you with better ones to ask about your life.
This week, my guest is the much-loved and inspirational CEO of Momentum Investo, Stanley Gabriel, who also happens to be my best friend. We explore everything from his formative years as well as the roles that shaped him into the game-changing leader he is today. Let's break.
Hi, Stan.
Hey, Seth.
How are you? Anyway,
I'm good, Chachi.
This is a formal platform. I'm going to call you Stanley Gabriel on this one.
No chachis.
No chachis. Yeah,
Okay,
I don't even know who you are.
All right.
So this is a whole, thing of me being a professional, and I will look at you and I'll ask you real intense questions.
I'm ready.
What did you have for breakfast today?
It was quite lovely, actually.
What did you have?
At our age,
Yeah,
we have to get some brand in. So,
for movement.
yeah, gut health is very important after 35, actually.
That is true.
So,
That is true.
yeah, so we had muesli, and then they have an amazing shakshuka where we're staying. So,
Yes.
shakshuka for breakfast too.
Where are you staying?
At the Dorp Hotel.
Lovely.
Yeah, we've just bid farewell to the Doyenne, Her Royal Highness,
Yeah.
the Queen,
Yeah.
Gail
The
Baroness,
Baroness. Everything, yeah.
Yeah, and it was quite a sad, sullen weekend, but also good to be in Cape Town to actually be here with the team here, the people that make this place a reality, to bid a farewell. So yeah, quite emotional, but
Very emotional. But I mean, so I know a lot about you, and I'm hoping
Yeah.
that for the next hour, you'll tell us everything that you do.
Sure.
But I'm aware of how busy you are in your life.
Yeah.
And I've always appreciated how you've always carved out time for things that mattered.
yeah.
So for you to just drop everything and find time in your schedule to come in for this, it was really, it speaks a lot about your character
No,
and
fair.
something
Thank
that
you.
isn't necessarily new to me. So,
Yeah.
based on that, what is it in your character that makes you, be able to discern? What are the things that are warranted, your attention, and what things can you actually let fall by the wayside?
Yeah, it's weird, hey, because I don't think there's a rule per se, and what do I drop? What do I end up doing? I just know what feels right. And the moment I heard about Gail's passing, I just knew I had to be in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think to be here for you, by the way. It was less about being here for you.
Trust me, I appreciate it
Yeah,
anyway.
but that helps.
Yeah.
But I think it's just the way somebody welcomed us. And, the human she was, what she gave us was, I guess, a little bit of license.
Yeah.
Here, we really feel at home in this place. She's zany, she's a bit of a crazy woman.
Yeah.
Hates people.
Yeah.
But
But
somehow
yet is the
liked
most loved.
us.
Yeah.
And she's really loved too. So I just knew I had to come. And I did have to cancel quite a number of things to make it here.
Yeah.
But it happened. My family was supportive. Work was supportive. So I could literally drop everything and make it here. And I'm glad I did. Yeah.
Cool. So now, before we dive back into, how you started and your rise and everything like that.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's clear that you're a leader. You are the CEO of Momentum's Investor business.
Yes.
Did I say that
yes.
correctly?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I do listen
Yeah, I
and find
hope
out what
so.
you actually do.
I hope so.
And that obviously comes with its own demands and certain expectations of how you should be leading and how you should show up. And you, as I know, you're someone who will take time off for things that matter, that are personal, like coming here. You will dress the way that you dress, which is
Okay.
always beaded. And you also, your nails might be painted. Tell me about that. How is it that you're able to sort of lead in that form, in that fashion? And how do you manage to create that space within environments that could technically be quite rigid?
Yeah, I think the environments remain largely rigid.
Yeah.
So let's not say corporate culture has necessarily changed. I think we have seen some changes, obviously, with COVID, evolving ways of work and people having to work from home.
Okay.
So things have had to be tweaked. But I think, financial services, insurance in particular,
we're dealing with people's money. So there's a level of seriousness. And that's the crazy thing about me. I'm very serious in some components, but I don't ever want to feel like I'm not fun either. You know, I am who I am. I don't know how to be different, you know, so when I meet people, this is me. So it feels weird to arrive at work and then have to switch up a little bit.
Yeah.
I think some of the approaches or philosophies I have about how to lead and what I allow versus don't allow are a little bit controversial. So I do appreciate that, you know, it's not something for everybody, but I think it's the only way to lead. You know, I think we're in an age where people are looking to be guided, where things are changing all the time. So we need people who are going to be a little bit, I don't know, nimble. And the only way you can be nimble is if you know exactly who you are.
Yeah.
You stick to that, and you're able to kind of give of yourself to the world. You know, I don't think you can do it when you're in an uncomfortable position, when you're feeling under pressure, you're feeling micromanaged, you know, you're being led by fear. I joke that work for me is an extension of my life. And I really mean it.
Which it should be, yeah.
And I really mean it, right? I don't even believe in work-life balance. I think it's rubbish. You integrate everything. So, yeah, I think it's just, I want to be myself. I don't know how else to be that.
Yeah.
And it's easy for me when I'm myself. I think that's been my biggest reward. It took me a while to kind of accept that I can lead in my way. And when I do, it's just so easy. I feel like I'm not doing a very difficult job.
Yeah.
And this is most probably the hardest task I've had in my career so far in terms of running a business. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so now someone looks at you today and says, cool, as a CEO of a financial company, you get to lead as yourself and show up in every space as yourself. It sounds like a dream.
Yes.
And it sounds like something that, well, maybe it's actually reserved for, you know, the unique, the special few, the Stanleys of this world.
Yes.
How would you tell someone that maybe this is my story, this is my journey, and maybe you can actually do it as well?
Yeah. Look, what is the one thing that you can control?
Yeah.
I guess it's how you show up.
Yeah.
You know, the quality of your work. So I believe in doing excellent work. I think a lot of people...
What does that mean?
No, a lot of people want all of the benefits that come with being allowed flexibility, but they don't want to put in the work a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's not even about working hard. It's even working smartly, but just maintaining a beautiful quality of work. You know, in my younger days, like 10, 15 years ago, people would always say, we can tell that Stan put his hand on this. And there's a signature, you know, there's a quality that comes.
Flair.
There's a brand, you know, that comes with it. And whether I was doing a governance document or a strategy document, you could always tell that, okay, Stan might have looked at this thing. So I think just get quality, get the quality right. Showing up. I think a lot of us think showing up is you have to be ready to face the world, ready to conquer everything, you know, Superwoman, Superman. That's not it. You know, showing up is sometimes being there. You're feeling flat, you do what you can, you get through the day, and that's enough. So show up as much as you can. If you have those two things right, then I think it's not just limited to me. But I think most people don't get those two things correct, to be quite honest.
And your work ethic.
Yeah.
So it's something that's been prevalent since, like, I don't know, since I met you at around varsity. Where did that come from? What sort of what honed that into you? Yeah,
so it definitely comes from my mom. Firstly, she studied in her 30s. Secondly, she didn't only work as a nurse during the day. She would moonlight at Morningside Hospital every single evening. So my mom would really do anything to make sure that her family was taken care of. And when I say family, I don't just mean us, her children. I'm talking about her siblings. You know, she put her sisters and my late uncle through school. She really also lifted my dad to a certain degree. My mom was the head of the household. And she believed in hard work. And I think that's where some of it comes from. But I had to depart a little bit from that hard work. You know, I think they grew up in a very different time. Apartheid, you know, my mom had to do a lot more just to get us into the right schools, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's also just accepting that I don't have to be the same hardworking, tired person for my life. I can actually do it my way. It's something that my mom's hard work has paved the way for me to be able to do that. So the ethic is there, but I've had to also strip myself of it's what I'm worth. You know, I have to be this hardworking, otherwise I'm not worth anything or I'm not valued. You know, it's a little bit of a departure from that. And that's something recent, as you know. Maybe the last 5 years, I've been more deliberate about working smarter, delegating, which means trusting other people to do the work too, and not feeling like it has to be me. Because there's something there, you know, about letting go and me not being my work. So that's...
Okay. So now give me the linear sort of trajectory of your life. So going from, I mean, in a big summary, because I think that the crux of it here is you are here now and you are this sort of maverick of a leader. And I think that's what we really want to learn about. But I think it still warrants us knowing how you got here, because it'll demystify a little bit the sort of like the tinsel that makes people think that like it's just you and it's only reserved for you.
Okay, how do I summarize this in a nice way? Maybe I should deal with all of the misnomers.
Okay,
Okay, the first misnomer is that I am a city boy.
Okay, yes,
no,
that's true.
I actually grew up in a village in the Northwest Province. I lived there for 4.5 years permanently. That's where I stayed. But throughout my schooling career, as much as we were back in Joburg, I spent my entire holiday in the Northwest, in the village. So I would say a lot of my influence was from the village, right? I spent a little bit of time in the township too. So we moved in the early 90s when apartheid was starting to kind of clear up into Diepkloof, which is one of the popular suburbs. It's in songs and everything. And we lived there for 3 years or so. And then moved to the suburbs, the southern suburbs of Joburg, which was now everybody's kind of living in the same areas, etc., going to fancy schools and all of that kind of stuff. So that was a little bit of my upbringing. So a big mix of village, township, and suburban life. Like, and I always say that helped me a lot.
Quite well-rounded and... Yeah, it's like a very South African experience.
It's a very South African experience. Well, I think a typically brown experience for South Africans.
Oh,
So,
because I feel like, that's exactly
Group Areas Act, exactly. So most brown people in South Africa would have had a similar experience of moving from, I guess, where their grandparents were into more colored or Indian or black townships, and then trying to get better education. So ending up moving into, I guess, suburban areas or what could have been previously considered white areas. So but I think I really acknowledged how well-rounded that made me. You know, only in my late 30s or the recent years, I never appreciated it as something. You know, I thought, like, why would I get along with so many people? But it's actually because I can kind of associate every single person I meet with some phase of my childhood or upbringing. So
I still think that's a lot to do with more you. I had the exact same thing. I've lived in the township, I've lived in the rural areas and in the suburbs, and I think I pretty much don't really like people.
Look, I was, since a young child, I was the life of the party. You know, if I was in a bad mood, it impacted everybody. And thank God I'm not in a bad mood often, right? So that really helps. But I just tend to bring the weather a lot of the time in my circles, in my family. I represent something, and a lot of it is joy. You know, it's good times. It's good moments of realization. It's guidance a little bit. There's just something good. It's like a warm stew, you know. I think that's kind of my environment. You know, I love making stews. It's like a good stew. And that's kind of how I feel as a person, you know, and it's been the case since I was young.
And then to demystify another sort of like untruth is the fact that everyone would perceive you to then be very shiny and like have had this like rosy and idyllic like childhood. But it wasn't always like that.
No, I mean, I don't think I had a traumatic childhood at all. I had a beautiful childhood. I think what I didn't realize is how we struggled as a family. I didn't know we were poor when I was living with my grandmother. You know, I didn't realize how difficult it was for my mom to give us all the experiences that we had. You know, I just assumed my mom would just make a plan and get me a tennis racket because I wanted to start playing tennis. But I didn't realize what she was dealing with. I remember my mom showed me her salary when I first showed her my salary. She showed me how much she was earning. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, how did she pull this together? and the previous generation, or our parents' generation, had a way of keeping their finances intact with very little, and really pulling through, children through education, moving homes. I don't know how they did it, because I think we've lost a little bit of that. So I just never knew what we were going through. I was protected from it. And looking back now, I think about it, I'm like, we weren't that rich. We weren't privileged at all. I didn't go to, the big private schools in South Africa. I was just lucky that I was also smart. So I ended up going to a good university and getting a bursary. But my mom really pulled a lot of ends to make the life that we had feel so blessed, I guess.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. I don't think it was. I think there's a lot of real trauma that my family had to go through from the 50s to when we were born and my childhood.
And your personal traumas. So, I mean, you've, as a child, you had incidences that involved guns.
Oh, gosh. I should be dead. It's weird because it doesn't traumatize me when I think about guns anymore, but I've done the therapy. So I was a victim of apartheid violence. I actually don't know how I survived in 1990. I literally, until recent therapy, I didn't even remember the details of what happened. I remembered the apartheid police outside, the noise, and our teacher left our classroom. And we'd been given strict instructions that you get underneath the desk and you stay there. And the teacher left us, which is obviously the first rule gone. And we're left as children. In a recent therapy session, I realized there was a moment I walked through the gate and it was very smoky. And then the next thing I know, I was home. So I'm actually not sure what happened, and I still haven't been able to uncover that. So that was the first time. Then my first year of university, I went out with my best friend at the time, before you. And
I wasn't jealous.
We went to Diepkloof and had a bit of a party without telling our parents, first semester over of university. And on a walk back from getting some slab chips in the township, we were confronted by two guys, and the guy with the gun came to me, which I'm glad about. I was very bold at the time. I think stupid is a better word. And I fought back. And he tried to shoot me, and he didn't manage. The third bullet actually hit my head, and then I gave up everything. I gave him my cars, my car keys, my wallet, my phone, and all of that. So he took my stuff, and I was quite dizzy. And that was the second incident. And then in Kenya, I was with my best friend in Kenya at the time, Sammy, and we were driving and we got robbed at gunpoint next to the biggest slum in Nairobi. And then more recently, I started walking about 2 years ago, just as a form of exercise. And I'm walking around my new neighborhood in Bryanston, and I got robbed at gunpoint again. So it's been like 4 different situations with guns.
And none seem to have, dimmed your light in the slightest and your zest for life.
Look, I think it's very hard to be self-righteous about why people do crime. And I know I'm privileged now. I kind of forgive the people that have done these crimes. I've done the work. I think you don't want to be carrying trauma. The one thing that if I hear a loud bang, instantly, I always shake. Like,
how do you deal with being in Cape Town at the noon gun?
Oh, no, I expect it.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a little bit easier. But I think there are things that will always stay with you, but I never wanted to limit what I think is my potential, or I'm sitting having nightmares at night and not sleeping. I just can't afford any of that. So I think just doing the therapy on that has really helped me to get past those situations. And I don't know, I'm still not afraid of guns per se. I go hunting from time to time, so I can hold a gun. And I don't watch my back in South Africa. I don't wait for the next gun kidnapping or anything to happen. I'm just going to live my life, and if somebody decides to blow my brains out, then that's how I go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on that note, we'll go back to, so then after UCT, so you go to your bursary, and that again, still showing that work ethic and that sort of like positive view on life. Yeah. And you started working. Your first job was at All Mutual.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
They gave me my bursary.
Yeah, so you're kind of tied to them.
Yeah. No, but it was actually the best place to start.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, you know, the support structure. So I studied actuarial science for everybody to know. The support structure around building future actuaries is really fantastic in South Africa. I think even our actuarial society here is very good, tied to the UK society, and the Scottish society, which is obviously the home of actuarial science. We've got many actuaries, and there's a drive to get more Black actuaries into the system. So I felt really supported through my studies. I think the issue for me was I didn't want to become an actuary. I think it's crazy that you're expected to decide your career at 18. So I really love the education I got. But man, that's not what I remember about university. You know, it's all a blank to me, to be quite honest with you. And when I started working, my goals were very much towards national health insurance system. I wanted to be a part of that journey, you know, on the pricing and modeling side. And it was just, I was disillusioned. You know, this thing wasn't happening. It's 20 something years later and it still hasn't happened. So I lost interest in my desire to become an actuary because I wanted to do it for national healthcare. And that didn't happen. I also realized my personality and my natural talents were not in sitting behind a desk, modeling and pricing, and correcting things to the 10th decimal place for them to end up being rand values. It just didn't make sense to me. So I preferred to kind of present, to meet clients, to be a bit more on the business development strategy side of things. And that's how I stepped out of kind of the actuarial job profile.
Was that with your move to Kenya?
Yes. And I think that was the biggest change that I've had in my life. I think when I moved to Kenya, I didn't realize
How old were you?
I was, 2008. So 25.
Okay.
24, 25. I was turning 25.
And again, in that moment, do you have like some kind of specific epiphany where you were like, I'm 25. No. I'm in my first job. I don't know why I'm drawn to doing this, but I'm gonna jump ship from my career and strike out and go to Kenya.
No, it wasn't an epiphany. It was a need.
Okay.
I had what I call a quarter life crisis at 24. I really hated my life. I was working, and the moment I could leave the office, I was out and about in Cape Town.
I remember.
Partying. I was literally a social butterfly, drinking too much, really just, forgetting about all my responsibilities. At the time, I was struggling with my sexuality too, really going through a journey of accepting myself as a gay man too. And I knew what I didn't want. I had no idea what I wanted, by the way. But I just knew that what I was living and how things were going is not what was right for me. And I think that's the only thing that guided me. It's the knowledge of what I didn't want rather than what I wanted. And that's how I ended up in Kenya. Now, did I imagine that Kenya would be a life-changing period of my life? No, I did what was available. And as I said, I was guided by what I didn't want. And that ultimately led me to something that, helped me find my purpose. It's almost like I just went out there and discovered, and the purpose started to become clearer and clearer.
What was your role in Kenya?
Yeah, it was interesting. There's a guy, Tava Madzinga, I think he's at Santam now. And he literally got me over and said, you don't need a job profile. Just let's see where you can add value. So I did product marketing work. I did a lot of strategy work. I was in his office helping him to be a CEO. So it was very broad. But no job profile.
Okay. And would you say that probably allowed you to then sort of like get your feelers and figure out where you actually excelled best?
Yeah, I think they call them chief of staff or executive assistant roles. I think those help you a lot with understanding business and where you want to fit in, and if you want to fit in somewhere or if you don't want to fit in somewhere. Yeah.
Cool. And then what was one thing that you think you took from that at some point when you decided, cool, I think my time here is done. I'm ready for the next juncture?
Sure. Look, there was a project that we did, and I was part of the sales team or the distribution team. And I got exposed to where the money happens, where the business cash flow actually happens. And I thought, I could do this. and I met somebody who was also passionate about similar things to me, and it was wine in this particular instance. And I thought, okay, maybe it's time for me to start my own business. I had finished the Old Mutual contract, so I thought, yeah, let's try something new. Let's go into business. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. It was actually a very bad idea in hindsight.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really being in the distribution, the business development, kind of facing clients on a daily basis, helped me with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, on a personal level, you don't necessarily feel like that was a bad decision. It was just basically the partnership that didn't work.
I still think it set a tone for more of an entrepreneurial spirit for me.
Yeah. Okay. And I think even up to today, I can't think if there's anyone who's distributing successfully wine into Kenya. So maybe you can still do it.
I wouldn't do it, but it is still a definite opportunity in the African market. Yeah.
Okay. And then from there, you moved back to South Africa.
Yeah. So the business didn't work out, sadly, Seth. The wine business failed. You know the history.
Yes.
We kind of worked with the same person through that period.
I don't think he warrants the airtime. So what's important is that it didn't work out.
It didn't work out. So yes, it didn't work out. And I moved back home. I was 28. I sold my car. I had to leave a foreign country with no money. I spent my entire life savings. I didn't touch my retirement though. That's
smart.
But I don't know. I guess it was the actuarial background. I just knew that you don't touch your retirement money. Yeah. But I basically was in debt. I'd lost all my money, and I moved back home. And I remember I got back home. I refused to take actuarial work because obviously that was there in abundance.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was a sabbatical. I'd never heard of the word sabbatical, but I took my first sabbatical. I asked my mom
28 must be nice.
Yeah, 28, yeah. And I asked my mom to pay for a ticket for me to go to India. One of our friends, Satish, was living in India. So I spent 3-4 weeks in India.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was kind of the first time I had to connect with, okay, who am I outside of work? And it was really difficult.
Yeah.
And I mean, I thought I learned some lessons there, but I think the lessons I learned were what I needed to do to be better as an entrepreneur. Okay. That was for sure. I knew I struggled with negotiating. I struggled to speak my mind. I was a bit of a yes man.
Okay.
So I agreed to a lot of things. And I think when you get into business and even more senior positions, you have to know how to say no. You have to draw boundaries very, very clearly. And I struggled with some of the ethical things. I didn't want to make money through bad means.
Yeah.
I knew that. I was very clear of, my values around how I would make money or how I would not make money. And it had to be ethical.
Yeah.
So those were the 3 things I was clear about from that first sabbatical. India was amazing.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Did you have to grapple at that point with, I don't know, any sort of dark moments of you feeling down? Because now the one thing that has always come naturally to you, which is your mind, your academics, and also excelling at work, for once had sort of felt like it was failing you, or now you needed to depart from using it as something that defined you. Did you struggle with that? Or?
So this is the interesting part. I think I only came to that later. At the time, my mom kept asking me, just take a job and you'll figure it out later. Yeah. And I said, no, I'm not settling. So I was a little bit ballsy, you could say. I knew that the right thing would show up. I believe that, and my mom to this day says, I can't believe you stayed at home and refused to take a job. And when you did get something, how well it worked out in the end. And you believed in that before anything even showed up. I was quite clear. I didn't have any issues. As I said, for me, it was, I need to work on myself a bit more.
So in that moment when you were sitting at home, was it your gut that was telling you that something right is coming, or was it your ego not wanting to go backwards?
No, pure gut.
Okay.
Until that age, 28, I was really led by what I didn't want. I knew I didn't want to go back into the actuarial field. I didn't want to be a traditional technical actuary. I didn't want to be an actuary. So what's the point of doing the work just to earn an income?
To lead you towards it if you're not.
It's a luxury, right? I had my parents to kind of accept me back home, and they didn't put me under too much pressure. But it all worked out in the end. And I don't know what it is that made me believe in it, but I totally believed in myself at 28, and I knew it would work out.
So then after India, you can sort of say that after that sabbatical, you ushered into the next.
Yes.
Yeah. What was the next?
Yeah. I think it was just me finding confidence in what I deliver. Like, I was just doing my job, really not.
What was the next job after that?
I worked for the CEO of Old Mutual Emerging Markets. So I was his chief of staff, or what we call an executive assistant.
Yeah.
So you basically, some people call it the briefcase holder. You basically helping him be a CEO.
Yeah.
And there were two of us. Ralph Mupita was quite a busy guy, right? So there were two of us, myself and a very good friend of mine, Kanyisa Ngumanish. She's the head of corporate at Sanlam now.
Yeah.
So both of us have actually ended up in leadership positions, but really, really difficult time, like in terms of how hard we worked, the work we had to do. But we loved our job, actually. And that was me starting to really appreciate what I bring to the table and seeing the value of it. And when I moved to Kenya, I never thought living in a foreign country and the experience of moving to a different country, a different culture, East Africa versus South Africa, I didn't think it was shaping me in any way. But then I started to see that I'd actually grown into something else. There was a lot of color to my personality. I wasn't just another number. I remember thinking, hey, there's something distinctive that you bring to the table.
Yeah.
And even Kanyisa and I, we had to split work. And it became quite natural how we split the work, She loved the big project, whereas I loved the engagement stuff, the cultural stuff, the people stuff. Sitting in the boardrooms, reading the room, thinking of messaging and the story of what we're trying to do. And I was more of the storyteller and more of the creative, even though we were both actuarial in background.
Yeah.
So I started to say, hey, this is what Stan brings to the table. I think I also started noticing my softer side, I guess, a little bit. Like being an entrepreneur and being confronted with some ethical issues, I started being myself, a little bit kinder at work. I wasn't going to stab people in the back to progress, none of that.
Yeah.
So I think I started to take shape a little bit around that time.
But so you could have stayed in that job for a while and then progressed to the next natural position because, working for the CEO, he was CEO of Africa, right, at the time?
Emerging markets. So
in Africa.
For
all of
across.
Africa.
It's so I think it was 16 countries in total.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Some in Africa, China, India, and also Latin America.
So then one would say that would obviously, set you up for the next job.
Yeah.
And you could have stayed and gone to that, but you decided you're going to leave the country again.
Yes. But I mean, I think it was because you have 16 countries to choose from. And I found the thing that I was passionate about in Nigeria.
Okay.
So it's not like I remember the first time I went to Nigeria, I was like, this is the most awful place. And a Nigerian even joked with me and said, the best way to fix Lagos is to start from scratch. And I believe them, it's overpopulated, 25 million people. It's hot and humid. It smells, it's not a place you go, that's where I want to live. It's unlike Kenya. Kenya, you would still say, I want to live in Nairobi.
Yeah.
But we were doing some amazing work there, starting new distribution channels.
So what was your role when you moved there?
So I was heading up strategy.
At what age was this now?
Sure. 29, 30, somewhere there.
Yeah.
Let's say 30. Let's call it 30. And it was my first EXCO role, actually, where you sit on the executive team and, you're reporting directly to the CEO of the business. I didn't think about it back then.
At 30.
I didn't think about it back then, by the way. So I was taking care of strategy, which was something I'd done. So it was very comfortable. But a bit more on the business development side, I was in charge of all of the alternative distribution. So we had a Pan-African partnership with a big bank called EcoBank across the continent. And we also worked with affiliates and partnerships and digital distribution capabilities as well. So it was quite a nice mix of what I knew I was good at and some of the stuff that was kind of more new age digital distribution, alternative distribution models.
So for someone on the outside like myself who has, watched your, progression along the years, I've always sort of like felt like, okay, well, maybe some of the jobs needed things from you that you weren't necessarily interested in, flexing. And in Nigeria, it was the first time where I felt every part of what the job actually entailed was very well suited for you. The only part I was questioning was now, for the first time ever, relating to your career, was your sexuality in a country like Nigeria.
Yeah, by that stage, I was so comfortable with myself, I almost didn't care. So my sexuality didn't get in the way in Nigeria. And trust me, there is a proper gay life in Nigeria. There was
but isn't it like underground and sort of like...
yeah, sure. But I mean, like
really? People say that it doesn't happen in the middle. It's either for the upper echelon or it's underground. And there's nothing in between. It's not a middle class
There isn't anything
problem.
in between. But I think I was living in the upper echelon of Nigeria.
With drivers
I was pretty well protected.
Okay.
So no, my sexuality wasn't a problem. I think the hardest thing about Nigeria is living in Nigeria and the personal growth you go through. It's not the job. The job was the easiest part. I think it's the things that I learned about myself while in Nigeria. I got tougher, 100%. That issue I told you about earlier of struggling to say no to people.
Of course,
Oh gosh.
Eradicated,
I loved saying no to people. I loved being very clear about my boundaries. And I stopped caring what someone would think if I said no to them a little bit more. So,
and I remember not loving some of your first returns from Nigeria, because you had become so like, in like the way that you would say when plans were being made, you would say no, which is fine to say no, but you would say it in a way that people would be like, what? Like,
it's a little bit dismissive. Like there's no please or I would like.
It was very like
you
Nigerian
say,
way of doing it.
And somebody actually, another friend, I think Satish said, dude, just take it easy.
I know,
just
for South Africans,
relax,
just like...
And you find the balance, and I think it's an adjustment. But for me, I think it was good to go to that extreme.
Of course,
to be told, man up, toughen up. And this man up thing means something very different in Nigeria. It's not anything about like being a man or anything like that. It's more just, you need to take the blows of life. Like this life's not easy for anybody. So you need to be ready and you need to get up and dust yourself off and keep going. And Nigerians have this amazing spirit when it comes to that. I think, that, and then as I said, as an entrepreneur, just learning how to negotiate better. I learned how to navigate very tough negotiations in business in Nigeria. And you do that through observing. I remember there's a guy called Ofong Amba who taught me exactly how to negotiate. And I still use those techniques today. And I think
a snippet of that.
It's a bit of a partnership approach. You know exactly what you want. Okay. You arrive with what you want, but approach it as a partnership. Make sure that the other person knows what's in it for them.
Okay.
And that's your job, essentially, to make them want the partnership more than you do.
And how do you do that without being manipulative?
It's not about manipulative. I think,
but how do you do so?
I think you just need to, if you don't have a case for why someone should do business with you, then you don't deserve their business.
Okay.
So it's actually making you understand what client need are you addressing at a very basic level. And that's where you hone it in. And it's a simple message. And once you're clear on that, trust me, the conversation is so quick. You're not beating around the bush. You go straight for the business deal. You go straight for the commercials. You're not focusing on, I don't know, what's the benefit for you? And all of the rest figures itself out. You're just hitting the business nail on the head. And then the rest just falls into place. I found.
As an entrepreneur who's not in the corporate space, for me, for that to be such an integral sort of like lesson speaks to the fact that maybe the corporate system is slightly broken, because that should always just be the thing. You're here to uncover the value, you're there to add, and then a deal happens.
Yeah, but I think of how many things get produced in this world, products, services, that actually don't speak to a client need. So I think everybody claims to be client-centric, but ultimately there are systems and I guess, things we used to that we don't challenge the assumption of, why is this product structured in such a way when it's supposed to help, you pay for your child's education, as an example, just a simple thing like that. And we don't question it. And I think in Nigeria, I learned to question everything, you know, and it's hard for us as South Africans to do.
No, for most South Africans, I think to go out of the country, especially into Africa, because the mindset is to say, go to America, go to Europe or wherever, but it's never really to Africa. And to do it twice and to come up basically with positive results to show after that. I think there's still not enough noise made about what other opportunities for South Africans lie in Africa. Why do you think that is? What's that block? Why do we still not think of, you know?
Look, I think it's not easy, okay? It's a lot easier for us as South Africans to say, I'm going to look for opportunities in Europe or America or Australia, etc. It's more developed countries. We think about the fact that they are more efficient. They don't have load shedding. They don't have corrupt politicians. By the way, they have all of that too. So I think that's the thing. A lot of people are looking for the first world experience. Okay, I was never looking for a first world experience. I was looking at growth experiences. I was looking for countries where I would be able to have an impact while I was still learning, right? And you're not going to get that in Europe. You're not going to get that in America.
You're just learning.
You're going to step into a role and you're going to do the social media managing, right? You're not going to do the photography. And I know that, you know, we do need to segment some of these roles and people get taken advantage of, etc. But there's something about having access to full media at a young age that would have, I can tell you, helped you a lot with what you're working on right now.
Of course.
So for me, seeing financial services from a nascent stage to an actual business operating, making money, it's something I would have never gotten in Europe. You know, I would have been slotted in and done pricing for this one product in this department here. And I was doing end-to-end business work. You don't get that opportunity elsewhere.
And it gives you ownership, I guess.
Yeah, and I think I sought experiences. I didn't care about it. I wanted to have rich experiences. It's what drives me. It's a motivating factor for me. And I wasn't going to have those rich experiences in Europe and the UK. That's why I chose Africa. Family. My sisters had kids, and especially my younger sister's second kid, I wasn't around, and I could tell the difference with him and his older brother, who I'd spent a bit more time. He was born around when I was in South Africa versus this one who was born when I was in Nigeria. And I missed out on those first few years. I missed being home. I missed my mom. I felt ready to come back to South Africa too. It was also a push factor. I really started to not enjoy my work environment in Nigeria. So I did start looking for opportunities in South Africa. But I came back mostly for my family.
Okay. And then as it seems to be a pattern with you, when you came back, you had another sabbatical.
Not immediately. Not immediately. I first took a job and I worked at Old Mutual again, doing innovation and digital work for just over 2 years. And my next sabbatical wasn't a choice. You know, I was moving to a better job and that didn't work out. And I ended up unemployed.
You end up retrenched. And then this time around, did it feel different to the first time? Do you feel as lost as the first time? Did you feel like you needed to go find yourself or readjust, recalibrate?
So it was different. Remember the first time I said the things I needed to work on were my growth and being a better asset to the world, you know, almost being sharper, being more of a business-minded person, having these skills. Whereas my second sabbatical was really about stripping away all the things I do and kind of focusing on me as a human being. And I was so over-associated with work. I just worked, you know, and my value was my work. And of course, it helped me grow, right? But I think I got to an age where it started to feel empty. You know, I was wondering, what am I doing all of this for? What does it mean? I remember I had a clear diary that August, and I would put in tasks like call mom. just so I had something in my diary. I was so used to
a full diary,
doing things, that I couldn't just be, so yeah, that sabbatical was more of a crisis of self. And I feel, I had to kind of meet myself a little bit in that time. And I was also clear that I'm not going backwards.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's one of those, once you open the box, you can't really go backwards.
Of course, once you know too much, then you can't go back. And what did you use to center yourself in that time? Like, were you meditating? Were you reading?
Yeah.
Did you, I don't know, find a different, skill to self-nurture? Because up until this point, you haven't spoken much about love, like your love life. So, like, what did you do in that?
I don't have a love life. I have a sex life. It's true. It's sadly true.
This is a PG-13.
Sorry.
Thank you very much.
No. There have been some great people in my life, but I think I still haven't found the one. So love is.
Do you think that thing exists? There is a one.
No, but we can talk about that in a different episode. We're not talking about my career. But I think this is where I got a lot of help from friends who'd been through similar things. I also met my current life coach or leadership coach, Henk Kleisen, and he ripped my chest apart. He really asked me questions I had never answered about who I am and what I stand for, and what's my purpose, rather.
I feel like that period was homework for all of us.
It was homework for you because I forced everyone else. So it was a point of self-discovery guided by people who'd been on journeys. I asked for a lot of help, and I got professional help too. And I traveled a lot as well, as you know, in that time. And I think that also helps you to get some lessons very quickly.
Of course,
I started doing transcendental meditation. I did a retreat in Sri Lanka. So just a few things that helped me with tools, but it was largely around, meeting myself a little bit more as an individual, rather than, the value I bring to the world. I just needed to be a human.
Would you, at that juncture, with all of the different disparate methods that you were employing, say that maybe that collective helped you set up to the stage where you are now in your life?
Yeah, I think all the dots connect when I look backwards. Absolutely.
Have you kept up all of the things you were doing at the time, or you picked a few and were like, oh, these ones are sustainable, I need them in my life going forward forever?
I think everything changed, to be quite honest with you. It was not about what could I do. It was, what are the things that I could really, add value to in my life going forward? And it was less task specific. It was more, what does Stan bring into the room when he arrives?
Holistically.
Holistically. So it's, where can I be a coaching soul? Where can I be a guide, right? Where can I bring empathetic leadership? Where can I talk about digital transformation and innovation and help people open up their minds to different mindsets, abundance.
All the while feeling yourself basically still, of clear mindset and calm and
without causing yourself stress, without working yourself to, like, I developed high blood pressure, as you know, at a very young age because I was working so hard. At like 29, I was already on high blood pressure medication. So how do you do all of this in a more organic way? How do you just flow into your life a little bit more? And that's the lesson from my second sabbatical.
Amazing. So I think, like I suspected, our conversation will have to be broken up into several parts. And I'm happy that I think you'll obviously be in my life to keep holding on to for your lessons. The final thing I want to close with is just one of the things that I think for me, a legacy probably seems too soon or too big or cliche, but to be able to sort of impart the way that you are always unapologetic about how you show up and how that is extended to how you lead as well, and how people respect you, love you, and want to do work for you because they respect you so much, not because they fear you, while you come in a package that doesn't read as CEO of, like, an investor business at Momentum. How what could you say to someone just who basically, I don't know, wants to tap into that space or looks at you as an example, just to close?
I think maybe that's what we'll talk about in the next conversation when we get a chance to have it. I think a lot of people doubt what they bring into this world.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal how we get tricked into believing we have to be all of these things.
Yeah.
And actually, we don't. You just need to be yourself. You have everything you need in this world. You are enough, and your perspective matters. And I think that's always my message. I mean, it's a philosophy that I think we'll talk a lot more about. But if I had to just say one thing to individuals after learning about my story in this episode is, you are enough, and your perspective matters. And you don't have to be anything else. That's really what I would give to the world.
I wish we had more time to unpack that, because it you make it sound so clear and so easy, but I want people to know what it is that they need to unlock to basically fully believe it. I feel like that's life's work, really, getting to terms with the fact that you are enough. And then that's where I'm going to need you for the next episode. But thank you very much.
Coming to you in... Hi everyone, I'm Stanley Gabriel and you are watching Breaking Eggs with Seth Shezi.
Thank you for listening. Catch us next week for another episode of Breaking Eggs with Seth Shezi. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave us a review. We would love to hear from you. Until then, let's break.